From curb-climbing SUVs to exploding cars raining debris, this episode is packed with driving drama and spectacular smashes. Buckle up for 20 dashcam videos you won't see anywhere else. Willardo was working one morning when he watched an SUV driver in a turn lane run a red light to make a U-turn, clipping the curb in the process, but he couldn't have predicted what happened next. Without warning, the SUV peeled out while continuing to turn before launching over a traffic island and plowing into the side of a car waiting at the traffic light. The SUV also glanced off the rear bumper cover of a BMW SUV. After the three-vehicle collision, the SUV driver stopped in the middle of the intersection while bystanders ran to help the involved drivers. Willardo checked on the SUV driver, an elderly woman confused about what had happened. First responders arrived quickly while the involved vehicles were moved off the road. Willardo told us that witness accounts varied wildly, making the police investigation into the collision very difficult to complete. For example, the BMW driver thought he'd been rear-ended, but obviously there was a lot more to it than that. Thankfully, Willardo's dashcam footage provided a clear and objective account of events. He provided a copy of it to the police, and he also confirmed that none of the involved drivers appeared to be seriously injured. Grant was driving home one night after work when he noticed a car swerve toward him as he passed it on a California highway, the first of many signs that something wasn't quite right. Grant continued to observe the car for the next 12 minutes. During this time, the driver drove in the shoulder, drove in the breakdown lane, made contact with the median barrier, and generally struggled to maintain control. Eventually, the driver took an exit, but as they sped down the ramp, they once again entered the shoulder where a semi-truck was parked without any lights on. The resulting collision was catastrophic to say the least.
Yep.
With no highway traffic immediately behind him, Grant made a U-turn across the highway and headed back to the collision scene on the shoulder, where he found the trucker already rendering aid to the car's occupants. Grant called 911 to report the collision, and first responders from the California Highway Patrol and Ventura County Fire Department responded to the scene. The next day, the CHP contacted him and requested his footage. It was then he learned that the driver of the car had been arrested and charged with driving under the influence, which certainly explains the driving behavior he'd witnessed before the collision. Stephen was driving down a Virginia highway one afternoon when another driver began tailgating him while he was using the passing lane to pass other vehicles. You know, exactly what the passing lane is for. Evidently, however, the other driver thinks the left lane of a highway is for exceeding the speed limit, because that's exactly what they did after Stephen returned to the travel lane, zooming off into the distance. That's not the end of the story, though. A few minutes later, a sheriff's deputy on the other side of the divided highway clocked the speeder and made a U-turn in the median before shooting past Stephen in hot pursuit. Moments later, Stephen cheered as he passed the scofflaw, pulled over on the shoulder to receive a helping of instant justice.
There it is.
Of course, Stephen knew exactly what to do with his dashcam footage.
Yeah, go on, Wham Bam.
It sure is, Stephen. If you've got dashcam footage to share, use the link in the description to send us the original and unedited video files, and you might see them featured in a future episode. Denise watched an SUV driver run a red light at high speed before T-boning another SUV. After witnessing the brutal collision that deployed the airbags of both vehicles, Denise called 911 and reported what she'd seen. She told the emergency operator she had dashcam footage of the wreck, but so far they haven't contacted her to get a copy of it. Patrick and Eevee are back with another instant justice submission. If you missed their previous one, we'll put a link to it at the end of this episode so you can check it out. When Patrick noticed an SUV driver ahead was starting to run a red light, he honked to get their attention. When the light turned green, he found out the SUV driver wasn't the only one who was alerted by his honking. We don't know why the SUV driver had failed to notice that their light was red, but hopefully that motorcycle cop was able to get to the bottom of it after turning on his party lights and pulling the SUV over. The last time Patrick sent us a video, he told us he promised his daughter Eevee that he'd buy Wham Bam decals for his Wrangler 4xE if the footage was featured in an episode. Well, he kept his promise. Check these babies out. Nice! If you feel compelled to let every random stranger know you're a fan of a YouTube channel they've probably never heard of, you can pick up your own set of custom decals at the link in the description. Jonathan was driving his Mustang GT when a Lincoln Navigator suddenly flew into his lane, climbing a curb before almost rear-ending a Model Y.
What the
When this happened, Jonathan thought the Lincoln driver was just being reckless, but when he showed his friends his dashcam footage, they pointed out that the Lincoln driver had actually avoided being sideswiped by a Camry. The Camry even had student driver stickers on it, which explains why they'd been changing lanes without checking their blind spot. Jonathan followed the Tesla into a parking lot to see if they'd been hit by the SUV. Thankfully, the SUV driver had managed to avoid hitting them too, so the only damage done was to their own wheels when they struck the curb. Mad Monk was driving his Toyota Camry in North Carolina when he watched a pickup driver leave the road before colliding with not one, but two power poles.
Oh my, that truck hit.
After obliterating the poles and being obliterated by them in return, the pickup skidded across the road, forcing Mad Monk to Tokyo drift around it to avoid a collision. He immediately called 911 to report the wreck, then returned later to provide a copy of his dashcam footage to the police. Thankfully, nobody was seriously hurt in the incident. Eric was slowly making his way down a California highway after traffic was reduced to a single lane due to a car fire on the shoulder. Watch what happened as he drove past it.
Oh my, it exploded and something hit my car.
A sudden explosion sent chunks of debris shooting into the air before they rained down on Eric's Toyota BZ, which he'd only owned for a month. The paint protection film he'd gotten handled most of the impact, but not all of it. A deep scratch now mars the top of his new car, but that's better than what happened to the other one. He told us that, on his way back that day, he saw it being towed away. Thankfully, the fire hadn't spread to anything else. Judy wasn't sure if her dashcam footage was Wham Bam worthy. Take a look and tell her what you think. She was driving down a road in Texas when a pickup driver tried to make a right on red before being T-boned by a car. The impact sent the pickup rolling before it stopped on its side. Judy stopped and waited for first responders before providing a copy of her dashcam footage to the police. Thankfully, even though multiple people had to help the pickup driver out of his wrecked truck, neither driver was seriously hurt. Judy told us she's been watching our channel since 2021. If you're a longtime fan like Judy, make sure you're subscribed so you'll never miss an episode. Even if you're sure you subscribed a long time ago, double check. YouTube does weird things sometimes. This subscriber sent us a video captured by his grandson. He told us he bought him this dashcam, the same one we recommend, after he got his driver's license. Check out what happened as he drove down an Ohio highway.
Holy, what the are you doing? Holy.
After the rider of a three-wheeled motorcycle pulling a trailer crossed the highway in front of his Honda Passport, he was forced to swerve and brake to avoid running into it. Thankfully, this ended up being only a close call. If you need a dashcam and like the quality of this one, don't forget that we have discount codes for our subscribers down in the video description. This subscriber watched as an SUV driver who wasn't paying attention slammed on the brakes to avoid a rear-end collision, only to be rear-ended by another inattentive SUV driver. Our subscriber thinks one or both of the drivers might have been distracted by their cell phones. He offered copies of his dashcam footage to the involved drivers and responding police after returning to the scene. Maria was on her way home from shopping with her boyfriend when they watched a Tesla driver behave badly, running a red light before making an interesting maneuver.
That Tesla man can't drive. That Tesla man can't drive.
Sorry, did I say interesting? I meant to say definitely illegal. Just because they use their turn signal doesn't make a right turn from the left lane a totally fine thing to do. Maria told us her father Miguel was featured in a recent episode of Wham Bam Dashcam, and she was excited that she'd captured a Tesla behaving badly. We'll link to that other episode at the end of this one in case you missed it. Eric was driving his F450 in heavy traffic when he was forced to stop to avoid blocking an intersection even though his light was green. An example of a time when drivers should leave a gap. Sadly, while Eric did the right thing, not every driver was so careful. An oncoming pickup driver made a poorly timed turn across the road before getting T-boned by another pickup. Eric stopped and checked on the victim before offering him a copy of his dashcam footage. Thankfully, nobody was seriously injured in the collision. John was on his way to work before sunrise one morning when he noticed one pair of headlights different from all the others he'd passed. This pair of headlights was in his lane. Thankfully, John was able to swerve off the road to avoid a head-on collision with the wrong-way driver. He told us that after the close call, he saw the other driver return to the correct lane in his rearview mirror. Brian was on his way home when the driver of a Nissan Rogue made an illegal left turn from a lane where traffic is only allowed to go straight, ending up next to his Nissan Titan pickup truck. There was at least one problem with that situation, however. There wasn't another lane on Brian's right. As the Rogue driver dodged around vehicles parked on the street, the SUV made contact with Brian's pickup. Police and paramedics responded to the scene, but thankfully nobody had been injured in the collision. When officers began making their report, Brian provided them with a copy of his dashcam footage, making the process much easier. The SUV driver's insurance provider accepted responsibility after seeing Brian's dashcam footage. They're now paying for a rental car while his insurance claim is being processed and his pickup is being repaired. Tom was running errands when he noticed the drivers of a Nissan Sentra and a Honda CR-V road raging against each other. Watch what happened after the Sentra driver made several attempts to cut in front of the Honda. Ooh, missed it by that much. After that embarrassing bottle throw, the Sentra driver ran a red light and sped away in the other direction. Tom told us he loves our channel and recommends that everyone get a dashcam. Thanks, Tom. Paul was having a snack in his Chevy Camaro when he watched a car slowly roll into the back of a pickup truck. And you'll never guess what kind of car it was.
Jump in! Honda bumped! Honda bumped! Yeah!
Yep, that's a textbook Honda bump. Thankfully, Paul told us he watched both drivers get out to inspect the minor damage to their vehicles, and he could tell that neither was injured. Rajesh was driving through Plano, Texas, when the driver of an oncoming Ford pickup turned across his lane even though he obviously couldn't see if traffic was clear. Rajesh swerved hard to avoid a collision as the pickup driver slammed on his brakes, producing an audible screeching. Rajesh told us he was fortunate to have space in the lane on his right when this happened. Felipe's wife was on her way to a grocery store when a pickup truck ran a red light ahead of her before colliding with a convertible. After getting groceries, Felipe's wife returned to the scene to offer her dashcam footage to the involved drivers. Sadly, by then they were long gone. Brandon's son Brian was headed to play hockey just 2 weeks after getting his first vehicle, a Honda HR-V that Brandon equipped with one of the dashcam models we recommend. Check out what he spotted on the way. After noticing the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, Brian was so excited he could hardly contain himself. He knew he had to share the footage with Wham Bam, and after seeing his reaction, we had to share it with you. Don't forget to check out this video featuring Patrick and Eevee's previous instant justice submission. Or watch this one featuring the submission Maria's father Miguel sent us. Whenever we get a new subscriber, we get just as excited as Brian did, so hit the subscribe button harder than a pickup driver hitting a convertible after running a red light.
Wham, bam, we got a Patreon man. Please support the show.